Well, welcome to Culture of Service Application. The objective of this lesson is to apply the key culture of service concepts to your particular organization. Specifically, you'll use empathy profiles to explore and understand your current culture and values, including the rituals, heroes, and symbols. And then you'll identify the desired values and the associated behaviors. And finally, you'll identify the rituals, heroes, and symbols that will illustrate and demonstrate the desired values and behaviors in your organization. So we start by applying empathy maps to the profile and profile rituals. So we're using the empathy map that you use back in the stakeholder module to understand the stakeholder's needs. We're just taking that and using it a little differently, and we've modified it a little bit to understand how people think, feel, and how it influences their behavior when they participate in one of the rituals or processes in your organization. So we've redesigned the labels a little bit in the bottom, and so you'll want to download the one specific for rituals. And then begin in the lower left-hand corner with the first step to identify the ritual, process, practice, and provide a brief description of what activities and artifacts are included. And you want to create enough so that you can describe this to the people you're talking about, because when you ask them what they see, hear, think, and feel, you want them focused on a very tangible and real experience that they had in the organization. So you want to pick a specific ritual, something they experienced, and talk about that and describe that. Then you want to describe the intent or purpose of the ritual, process, or practice. You may not tell this to the person you're interviewing, but you want to know it because you want to know what we're trying to accomplish with this ritual, and what expected reaction and results are we hoping to get when people participate in this ritual. And then you can compare that to what the people tell you that how they actually react. So once you've got those two defined, you're ready to start talking to the people who have experienced that ritual and get them to describe what they saw when they experienced it, and write that down and capture it. And at the same time, ask them to talk about what they heard whenever they experienced that particular ritual. And these often come together. So you might ask these one at a time, but the dialogue and the description you're going to get from them might have all of this embedded in it. So you may have to analyze that narrative and discussion and description that you get from them and tease out the answer to these particular questions. Next, what do the participants think during and after experiencing the ritual? And how did they feel? And how did that then drive or change and what they did and what they said? And so it's the same steps from an empathy map that we did, again, back in the stakeholder module, but you're applying it now to a specific event or ritual in this case. And then what values can we infer from what the participants saw, heard, thought, felt, and eventually did and said? And are those aligned with the intent back in step 2 to the left? And does it all make sense and line up? Or are we getting something different than what we were hoping for or expected? So you can do this for all the different rituals, major rituals in your organization. And you really need multiple inputs for this. And so while it might save a little time doing focus groups, and some people have done that using empathy profiles. However, really the best way to get the good data is to go and talk to people one-on-one. That way you're getting what they saw, heard, thought, felt, without being influenced by other people. So asking these in private is often the best way to get good data. And do that multiple times so that you've got quite a few inputs to this, because not everybody's going to react the same way. So when you go do this, maybe you pick like the all hands kickoff retreat, all expense paid trip to some resort with your significant other. The company I used to work for, we did this every year, and everybody went on this trip, and it was all expenses paid. So that was a ritual in this organization that I'm talking about. And the purpose of the ritual was to celebrate the previous year, bring the company together to do that, and kick off a new year with increased teamwork and collaboration and a feeling of togetherness, if you will. And so everyone, regardless of position or title, is there having fun, reaping the rewards of the year. So everybody's sharing in the rewards, and it didn't matter what your title was or what your position was, everybody got to go. Um, and what did they hear? Well, you heard a lot of talk about how great the company was, how everybody was positive, and things like that. And what did the participants think? Well, many of them thought this was like a very cool benefit. It made this company a bit unique, or certainly rare, if not unique. And it was really ends up being a great place to work. And in fact, this company ends up being in the top 10 of Fortune Great Place to Work, probably 20 years ago, 15 years ago. What did the participants feel? They felt valued, appreciated, felt like they were part of a team and an equal member of the team. So the details that were designed behind this all hands kickoff retreat were intended to make people feel valued and appreciated, and it worked overall. So what do people then do? They then tend to use their discretionary energy and effort to help customers succeed so that the company succeeds because they're part of a team where everybody shares. And they recommend the company to their friends and those they want to work with. And so you get the employee referral side of that. And finally, the values that were represented were valued employees, teamwork, customer focuses, which is the reason we succeeded. And so this is just an example of taking an all hands retreat and using the empathy map to explore that ritual and what people thought and felt. Complete your own. Of course, as always, download the empathy profile for rituals, processes, and practices, and then pick a ritual or a process or a practice. Could be a meeting. It doesn't have to be as cool as a kickoff. Maybe you've got some process like onboarding or filing an expense report or something like that that you want to explore, and interview a variety of people in your organization and get them to describe all those aspects for you, what they see and hear, think and feel, say and do. I really recommend if you can get them to allow you to record it, and it's not a sensitive topic, to actually do a recording. Because if you're going to analyze this data and you're going to analyze, multiple people and their answers, like I said before, often the answers to these areas on the empathy profile are embedded in the thick, rich description that they give you when they're talking to you. That's often difficult to tease out and analyze on the fly while you're talking to them because you want to stay engaged and ask questions and keep the conversation going. So my recommendation is that you record it, and then many people turn that into a explicit or a verbatim transcript to analyze. And then once you've compiled all this and put a composite together of no one single individual, but your overall conclusions of the 9 boxes in the empathy map profile, then take that around and get feedback from colleagues, boss, subordinates, even maybe the participants. Of course, since it's composite of multiple participants, it may be a little different than what they told you. And then finally incorporate the feedback into a revised version. And so that's what you would do for a ritual. They do the same thing to explore heroes in your organization. And in this case, you're going to identify a specific hero, provide a brief description of the hero's characteristics, accomplishments, etc. Sometimes these are the founders of the organization. Sometimes it's the people who do really cool things, save lives sometimes, or did some special thing with a customer, or whatever. But who it is that people tell stories about, talk about, hold up and revere? Pick one of those and describe it. And then describe the values that hero represents. This doesn't have to be necessarily good, right? It could be a hero that has values that don't actually line up with the values that you're hoping to have in the organization. So it doesn't have to be somebody that's lined up with your values. It really just anybody that we're holding up and emulating would be a good one to do. And then you can find out and analyze whether they're consistent or not with the values of the organization. And of course, then, just like the other one, you're going to describe what participants see when they observe the hero in action, the hero's behavior, what they hear the hero say. And then what do they think about what they're seeing and hearing? And how do they feel when they see the hero and somebody that the organization holds up and or the people in the organization hold up say and do those things? And then how does that affect and influence what they then go do and say in the organization? And finally, from their description, you already did this in the middle block on the bottom, number 2, earlier, but from their description, not yours, infer what the people are thinking about the values that this hero uh, exemplifies, and then analyze whether they're aligned with what you would hope or what you thought. So, same type situation. Maybe you've got the number one salesperson of the year, and you've decided that they talk about this person, they hold them up. They're always saying, "This is how Samantha does it," or something like that. And then, how does the organization treat the hero? Well, maybe they have celebrations. They bring the company together, and maybe this does increase teamwork because everybody's behind and working for them. And maybe it doesn't. But the purpose of celebrating is people is to show what people have done, show appreciation, and show them an example. So what people see the hero do. Maybe the hero is working overtime, making deals that don't make sense for the delivery cost and thus maybe a low profit. Not unusual in some organizations. Maybe people are hearing the numbers of sales is the only metric that matters, and everything else is a distraction. So it doesn't really matter whether you did it well or did it ethically. If you got the sale, that's all that matters, and that may be the message that they're getting from holding this person up. What do they think about that? Maybe they think they have to work harder for less company profit to deliver the products and services for the price. And so maybe they're suffering from the sales that were made because they're the ones holding the bag. Also, maybe they feel used. They may feel used and unappreciated. The person causing the problem is the hero, and they're left holding the bag, delivering on a contract that may have been designed in a way that's very difficult to make a profit off of and meet the customer's needs. And what do people then do? Well, the dedicated ones try to make it work, but many simply fail to deliver and then blame the salesperson. What do people say? This place doesn't care about anything but sales. They don't care about the customer nor the long term. Now, all of this is, I don't use this example to indicate that sales are not a good thing. They are really what we're working towards in the for-profit business. And so we want more of them. But as we've already talked about in previous modules, the way to grow sales and do that in a sustainable way is to sell really great products and services and offerings that you deliver on so well and create such great customer experiences that they come back and they buy more and they bring their friends with them. And consequently, you grow sales exponentially that way. And finally, you would do an analysis of this and what people are seeing and hearing and thinking, feeling, and then saying and doing to come up with some conclusions of what values this hero represents, and write that down and compare that with what the intent is. So to complete your own heroes worksheet, process is really the same. Download the empathy profile for heroes and pick a hero in the organization and complete the profile, asking multiple people to weigh in. And again, using the same types of methods we talked about before, including, I recommend you record the conversations because so much goes on in those discussions and descriptions. It's very tough to capture that with notes. And then present and explain your consolidated empathy profile to your colleagues, boss, subordinates, and get their feedback and insights and thoughts on this. And finally, incorporate that into your final version. Then there's one additional empathy profile to work on, and that's the symbols one. And so in this case, you describe the symbol and provide a brief description, including any media that are used to communicate the symbol. And then what's the purpose? Why do we have it? What's the intent? and what's the expected reaction and result. And then describe what participants see when they see the symbol. So you want to make sure they're thinking about the symbol that you're talking about. If you can show it to them, that's best. And then find out what they're seeing and hearing and how they interpret it and think about it and how they feel about it, how that makes them all feel. And then finally, how does it influence what they do and what they say? And again, the last block is to analyze this and from their data and from their description and not yours, what can you infer about the values that this symbol represents? And again, it may not be representing the values you think it does or that your corporate intended it to do, because we put forth symbols, we create rituals, we even hold up heroes. We're always intending to do good with those things. We're never intending for things to go bad. Unfortunately, people have their own way of interpreting these things, and they often interpret them in different ways than executives intend them. And it's important to realize and understand, and that's why this is called an empathy profile, is to empathize with the actual people that are interpreting this and how their behavior is being affected. It doesn't help to tell them they're wrong about the way they're interpreting things. What we're doing is trying to gather data so we can redesign things, so that we can change the rituals, change how we choose and who we choose for heroes, and change the symbols and what they mean. So again, maybe it's parking places for the executives near the front door. And the purpose is to celebrate, bring company together, increase teamwork. You may be laughing at this point because that's really not what happens for reserved parking places, as you might imagine, and I've already foreseen here. So, but maybe that was their intent. Maybe the fact that they need an executive team that and celebrate their promotions, and they get perks for that because they do great stuff for companies, and it brings them together as an executive team maybe. For the rest of the company that are walking past these parking places at 6 a.m. in the rain and the snow, and the parking places are empty because the executives don't come to work yet, and they're seeing a different thing, and they're taking a different message, of course, from that. And what do hear people say? That executives deserve the parking places near the door, and maybe they do, and they have important things to do. I've heard it all my life, and even benefited from this from time to time. But what about all the people in the organization? And if we care about how they're operating and how this is affecting them and the culture, then we start looking at it from their eyes, which is what an empathy profile helps you do. And then what do they think? I'm not as important to the success of this company as the executives. And so how does that make them feel? Unappreciated, not considered an important part of the team, sometimes resentful. And somebody that is unappreciated, doesn't feel part of the team, resentful, and doesn't feel important, then they often do the minimum required. Why would you do anything else? That's some people's approach. They don't use their discretionary energy and effort to help the organization succeed. And maybe they talk negatively about the leaders, and which spreads and picks up, goes viral, if you will, sometimes. And the leaders don't care about us, and they only care about themselves. And if that's the message that you wanted, was a workforce doing the minimum required and what they're told, then this is probably working for you. But if you're looking for a talented workforce, highly engaged, who are recommending the company to come work for and spending all their discretionary energy and effort to improve the organization and help everybody succeed, maybe this isn't accomplishing what you thought it did, and maybe it's not worth the price. So when you do an empathy map for the executives who have the parking places, you're likely to get different answers. And so that's why it's important to look at multiple levels in the organization from multiple perspectives, because one person's perspective may or may not represent anybody else, much less the group. And if it does represent the group, it's likely that group is a subset of the whole organization. So you want to talk to a lot of people. And eventually, you're going to want to analyze this information. And when you do, and you've got multiple groups, the answer may be different. The hierarchy, the values represented to one group of workers might be that hierarchy and the status privileges associated with position in the organization are the important thing, and that's the message we're taking. That may be a completely different message than the executives that you fill this out with. So I'm not against parking places, but if you're trying, depending on what you're trying to accomplish in the organization, you can use this to analyze them and find out from different perspectives how people think and feel about them, and how that affects their behavior, which is what we do care about, because that affects company performance. So again, same process to complete your own. Download it, pick a specific symbol, and do an empathy profile for that one symbol, and then shop that around and get people to comment on it, incorporate it, and move on. Then the next worksheet is a values and behaviors worksheet. And in this one, we take and identify the values and list those in the first column, and then identify the behaviors that we think or you think reflect that value. What is the expected result of these, and what is the expected result of the behavior? So, for instance, you'd list the behaviors: valued employees, trust, teamwork, excellence, customer focus, just taking these from our key concepts document, and then list the individual behaviors and characteristics that you would expect to see that are associated with that and would represent that, and maybe allow us to understand that we do have teamwork. So these are making the behaviors a little more explicit. Some groups will take this and go one step further and actually develop scenarios that describe what cooperative, selfless, loyal, of service, ambassador, what those things are, those behaviors look like in the actual jobs. And in some organizations, they've actually taken this and done this for different types of jobs and created scenarios, almost like we do when we're trying to teach ethics and teach people what is expected of them in different situations. Similar type cases can be developed and described that help make what these values look like in people behaviors a little more concrete, a little more tangible. And that helps you not only teach values, teach what they really mean in the organization and what your expectations are. It also helps you evaluate whether people are actually demonstrating these behaviors that support the values. So to complete this, download the worksheet, and again, identify the organization's desired values, what you're trying to go for, and then for each value, describe the behaviors that demonstrate and support that value. And then take that around, because you'll often find that this is a topic where there's a lot of varied opinions and approaches to what does and does not represent a particular value, and then incorporate that into the worksheet. So the last worksheet for this lesson is a culture of service worksheet, where we're stepping back and we're taking the things that we just talked about and did, and we put on a big diagram, or big map, if you will, and framework. And we look at the values and we list those, and then we look at how the rituals, heroes, and symbols support that value or don't support the value. And maybe they even send a completely opposite message and undermine the value. And so in this case, you would identify the desired values, then describe the rituals, processes, practices, then identify and describe the heroes that epitomize that value, and then the symbols. And so you would do this for the different values in your organization. You probably have more than 3 values, so you're going to need to make a couple copies of this framework. And then talk about the different rituals and how we choose heroes and things like that would support that, and or the rituals, heroes, and symbols that don't support it and or against it. And some you might use different colored Post-it notes in your drafting of this to indicate positive, neutral, or negative impact. So to complete this for yourself, download it, identify the desired values, and then the rituals, heroes, and then share that. And this is one that actually works really well with a group. And so does the previous behaviors and values one. Both these last two can be done in a group, and it works quite well doing it in a group, and because there's always a lot of discussion, a lot of different viewpoints on what these things mean, and then incorporate that into your revised version, and you're done. So at the end of this, you have quite a bit of paperwork describing the culture, but it's putting it in a format that hopefully leads you to things that are more tangible and levers that you can actually do something with, and set you up to do an assessment of your culture that's at a little higher level, and an overall assessment, which is what we're going to do in the next lesson on culture of service assessment. We'll see you there.